few council members that are getting pulled in. So Sherry, if you could slowly take the roll.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Present from the Lansing, Michigan, remotely.
Councilmember Hussein.
Present, participating remotely from Lansing, Michigan.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Present, participating remotely from Lansing, Michigan.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Present from South Lansing, Michigan.
Councilmember Garza.
Present, participating remotely from South Lansing, Michigan.
Councilmember Betts.
Present, participating remotely from Lansing, Michigan. Sorry, Peter, didn't mean to call on you there.
Watch it.
Councilmember Jackson.
Present, participating remotely from the Lansing, Michigan.
Councilmember Wood.
Present, participating remotely from Lansing, Michigan.
All 8 council members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. And just before we get on to business, I do want to just welcome to the table, such as it is, Mr. Mark Lawrence, who has been appointed recently by Mayor Shore to serve as the executive assistant and liaison between the city council. This is his first meeting on duty with us. So welcome, Mark. We all know him as the citizen advocate, so it should no stranger to us, but this is the first time he'll be joining us in his new capacity.
Nice to see everyone. Thanks.
And also for those of you who may see text at the bottom of the screen, we finally figured out how to get live transcription. It's not very good with Spatafor or Spitzley, but we'll see what happens most of the time as we get through it. It gets most of the words correct. So we all know who we are. So with that, I would ask Vice President Hussein for a motion on the minutes.
Sure. I would move the January 20th meeting mittens. I'm anticipating that snow tonight. Meeting minutes as presented.
Very good. Anyone have any questions about the Bernie meme that the Vice President just read?
That was going to be my question.
Okay. Very good. No questions on the minutes that I see. All right. Would clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Was not present.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Next up is public comment. So I will remind folks, as with all of our public comments, you have 3 minutes. Please raise your hand. Option Y on a Mac, Alt Y on a computer, star on a PC, star 9 on your telephone, and touch the raise hand button on your touchscreen device. We will close out the comments after the first person is done speaking, unless that person only takes 10 seconds, and then we'll pause a little longer. First speaker is Loretta Stanaway.
Good evening. A couple of quick things this evening. First off, I was trying to look at the information in the council packet for the changes to the agreement with Lug Nuts, and I could not find anything that told me what the changes are. There's nothing in there that I could locate that gives anything that explains what the details of the proposed changes are, and I found that disturbing. I also could not find any documentation for the rezoning of West Erie and 500 North Cedar in the council packet. The hyperlinks were not there as far as I could locate. I tried using the hyperlinks to go to the relevant places and could not make that work. On the Moores Park Pool, Parks and Recreation, certainly I am in favor of that. And I saw there were quite a few emails in support of it. I did not see any that were not in support of it, but I think it would be helpful if the clerk could read into the record the number of the pro park pool emails, just so that people can get a sense of how much support there is out there for that project. And that, I think, is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. That concludes our public comment. The next item is a presentation, and I'll just note for those paying attention at home, this is out of sequence. We normally wouldn't do a presentation before it's been referred to us. There is some timeliness to it, but we wanted to have at least two meetings on this before council was asked to even consider it. So the items will be referred to us, and those are working their way through the formal process. They will end up on our website once they're formally referred. The presentation tonight is to get ahead of that referral. No action is expected from council this evening. So for the person it's Loretta. For Loretta who asked, and others who may have been wondering, we will not be taking action on it. And for the council, this is also, for many of us, maybe the first time we're seeing the details as well. So it is purely informational this evening. It will be referred tonight at the end of the city council agenda back to the committee of the whole. And in 2 weeks, we will look at it in a more formal way. But that's why this feels awkward, because it is out of sequence. It came to us as soon as it could, from what I understand from Mr. Smirka. Will probably elaborate on that. But there are some timeliness issues to it too. So in consulting with a few folks, we decided that this was probably the best way to do it without adding another special cow in the intervening 2 weeks, to make sure that we had two chances to hear and then ask questions on it. So with that, I will turn it over to representatives from the administration on the presentation related to the Second Amendment to the stadium license.
Mr. President, maybe I should kick this off.
Yes.
And introduce. Presenting, I want to give you some background to council, because a lot of you were not here from the beginning of the entry of the lug nuts into this market and into Lansing. A lot of things happened between 1995 and 2011 and 2015. Presenting today, Mr. Dixon, the owner of the lug nuts, will address you. Our finance director and our outside financial advisor will either address you or be available for any of your questions. But some background. So it presented a letter to the city council giving the outlines of the deal. The restructuring was proposed, restructuring to the current lease stadium use agreement was proposed by TMO, which is the owner of the lug nuts, because of two reasons. Number one, the loss of the baseball season because of the COVID, and also major restructuring by Major League Baseball with respect to the minor leagues. And those two events have precipitated the proposal and the discussion. And I know the timeliness is an issue. We had our first meeting on this with the lug nuts December 18th and received the first proposal on January 5th of this year. A lot of that had to do with uncertainty of how Major League Baseball was going to restructure the league and putting their requirements on the minor league teams. And you may have seen before that the Oakland A's, according to Mr. Dixon, are now going to be the franchise for farm system in Lansing. So we entered into negotiations over the last few weeks, and we really didn't end up with a conceptual deal until Friday morning at 10 o'clock. Lisa Hagan in our office has been charged with drafting the amendment, and she's working on it as we're talking. So Mr. Dixon can address that, but a little background. The first agreement with the lug nuts goes back to 1995, where the franchise of Single A was going to locate to Lansing. The city built the stadium using a multiple variety of financing devices to accomplish that. There were also, we took the main revenue sources at that time for sports stadiums such as ticket sales, concessions, merchandise, advertising, parking, and naming rights, things of that nature. And we divided it all up. There was a minimum of 55 home games they were going to play in the stadium. And there was a concept that we came up with called DGR, or designated gross revenue, which was a percentage of all these items I just mentioned. Parking remained with the city, as did naming rights at that time. And the first naming rights agreement was Oldsmobile. It was a $100,000 deal of naming the stadium as Oldsmobile Park. Subsequent to that time, and I can only report on this from what I see in a 5-inch book here of all the agreements that happened since that time, but it culminated in an agreement in 2014 in a First Amendment to that agreement. And in that agreement, the city committed $13.5 million of renovation funds to enhance the stadium. And TMO agreed to make an additional cash payment in addition to the DGR payment and everything else for $125,000 a year. So that's where we are right now. We have an agreement that is detailing everything I just said, and it goes through 2034, I believe it is. If any council members, we have a summary of the details of that 215 agreement. If anyone's interested in that, it's bullet points. It wasn't prepared for this presentation, but we prepared it as a resource in our department, so I could easily share that with you to give you more of the details. The transaction conceptually would do a number of things, and I'm reading this for those that actually don't have this. The city will continue, the lease payment structure will be turned into a fixed payment instead of the DGR formula of a percentage. And it starts out in 2021 to 23 at 175,000 and escalates upwards. The city continues to maintain the parking revenue and 25% of concessions, food and beverage for city events. There's a naming rights agreement with Jackson National, and that will continue to be split at 50-50. And then there's a guarantee after that if that naming right agreement expires. The TMO has agreed to make the additional cash payment that it promised in 2014 for the renovations. They will continue to make that payment. We have to, because of Major League Baseball requirements, have to finance certain improvements. Mr. Dixon can explain what those improvements have to be. Utilities will still remain at 50-50. We had an obligation for capital improvement expenditures in the stadium, and that is being changed for 2021 to 2022. It will be zero, and then it will go up to 50,000 in 23 to 24, and then 100,000 for the balance of the lease. The lease is being proposed to be extended for some period under 5 years. And that's basically it from my perspective, just to give you some historical background for where we are right now. And I think at this point, unless there are any questions, Mr. President, perhaps you could let Mr. Dixon speak to this.
Yeah, why don't we go, let's get through the presentations. I know I have several questions, but I've written them down. So why don't we go ahead and, Mr. Dixon, welcome to City Council this evening, and go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have to just take a moment and just reflect back. When I listened to Jim Smirka talk, he and I were he and I were actually there in 1995 when we did this first lease together. So, Jim, it's good to see you. We've been around together a long time. I'm sure some of you were, I don't know, it looks like some of you were barely old enough to go to a baseball game in 1996. But anyway, it's good to see all of you.
I was at opening day. My photo, the shirt I bought from that day doesn't still fit though.
Well, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. And also, please, thank you for allowing this meeting to go a little bit out of order. And I'll try to explain as best I can why we're here and why we're making this request. And I'm not going to take up a bunch of time because there are other people that I know want to update you a little bit, and I'm sure you're going to have some questions. So I'll try to be brief, but I think some background is in order here. So let me start with why we're here at all, making a request to modify our lease deal, which we did 6 years ago, as Jim said. So it's, we're 6 years into a 20-year deal. Normally we wouldn't be back talking about modifying a lease after 6 years. I suspect many of you or all of you have seen in the media, in the press over the last year or so, what's been going on in the world of minor league baseball. Obviously, I live in the world of minor league baseball, so it's affected us, me and our staff and all of my colleagues greatly. I'm sure to you, it was probably a passing interest, if an interest at all. But as Jim said, there's really two things that have happened. One everybody's aware of, which is obviously what happened to our season last year, among many other businesses in Lansing. We were completely shut down. This pandemic couldn't have come at much of a worse time. Obviously, in March of last year, right when we just come off a 6 months off season and we're getting ready to play again. And then obviously we got shut down. So by the time we start playing again, hopefully this spring, we'll be looking at, a couple of years of a year and a half of no baseball and very little revenue. If it were just that, we probably wouldn't be here today, but there's actually a much more significant reason we're here, which is a complete reorganization of minor league baseball by the major leagues. And I'll try to explain briefly what's going on. And I don't mean to present this as an ominous or a bad thing, by the way. I think much of what's happening here is going to be very good for not only the Lansing Lugnuts and Lansing, but minor league baseball in general. But there are some significant changes. So without going into too much detail, minor league baseball, as you all know it, has been around for about 100 years. And it's all been managed over those 100 years by an independent association, a not-for-profit association out of Florida. It's been referred to as the National Association of Minor League Baseball. Or we refer to it as the NA, the National Association. All the minor league teams were a member of the National Association. And then we in turn had a relationship with Major League Baseball. So we were our own organization. We kind of set our own rules, and then we kind of cut a deal with Major League Baseball to provide relationships between the teams and Major League Baseball. And that's how we end up getting players from the various organizations. That has been completely upended. Essentially, about a year ago or so, Major League Baseball decided that they wanted to take over the minor leagues and control the minor leagues. I don't think it was a power grab as much as it was done at their intention to try to unify baseball across America, from all the way from little leagues all the way up to the major leagues. And we're a very important part of that. So they decided they wanted to take over the minor league. So the relationship with the National Association has essentially been disbanded, or soon will be disbanded. The relationship between the National Association, Major League Baseball, has been terminated. So essentially starting now, Major League Baseball will control the minor leagues. So our relationship in Lansing, for example, instead of going through the NA and then to Major League Baseball, is a direct relationship with Major League Baseball. And like I say, there's nothing bad about that. In fact, there are some good things that have come out of it. For one thing, as you may have seen, we are actually being upgraded to a higher level of minor league baseball. So instead of being kind of the second rung on the ladder on your way up. We're actually going to be another level higher. So there'll only be 2 levels above us before you get to the majors. So that's a good thing. We are moving affiliates from Toronto to Oakland. I won't get into all the details of that, but for anybody who's an Oakland A's fan, they've got a long, proud history. So we're kind of excited about that. We had a good partnership with the Blue Jays, but they decided they wanted to keep their affiliate in Vancouver. So anyway, those are changing. Some of the other things that are changing are maybe not so positive. Now, they don't affect us quite as much. Certainly the first one doesn't, but you've probably read the thing that got the most attention is 42 minor league teams have been eliminated completely from this structure. And we were not one of them. We were one of the, there are 160 teams before this started, and there's now 120 teams. So if you were one of those 40 communities that had a minor league baseball team that was eliminated, obviously you wouldn't be feeling very good about it. Fortunately, we were invited to the party because we've got a great market. We've got a terrific ballpark. We've done very well, frankly, over the last 20 years from a support standpoint. So we're excited to continue to be part of this, but it is important that all of you know that, to be honest, we came fairly close probably to not being on the list. When we lost the Blue Jays a couple months ago, we weren't 100% sure how this was going to go down. So I think we should all be pleased and proud of ourselves in Lansing that because of our reputation, because of our facility, we were able to attract another partner. So that's good news. The other thing that's happening is we are being required as a team, as part of the new partnership with Major League Baseball, to invest in some player improvements that we have not been required to do before, that frankly are going to cost us, we're estimating probably as much as a couple $100,000 a year. Just to give you an idea what some of them are, there's new requirements for travel, like we're going to have 2 buses busing these players around at very significant expense to us. Now that's going to go up, it's going to be twice. We have new requirements for feeding the players. I mean, basically MLB as part of this restructuring is upgrading the way they're paying the players, the way we're treating the players, and the quality of the facilities that they're playing in. So none of that's a bad thing. In fact, you could say all that's a good thing, but there's a cost that comes with all that. The stadium itself is going to be required, as Jim mentioned, to undergo some improvements over the next couple of years. There's some new lighting requirements. We're going to have to put new lights in the ballpark. Our lights are just completely out of sync with what they should be these days. They were put in 25 years ago. We're going to have to put another batting cage in for the players because we don't have a good setup there, a good enough setup there. So at the end of the day, there's some pros and cons to this, but that's what's happening, right? So there's a big effect. So even if there was no financial reason to change the deal, just the fact that there's so much changed, it probably makes sense to change the lease anyway, because the parties are actually changing. So let me just quickly go to why we're doing this under a fairly quick timing, because you're probably wondering what's the rush here. First of all, as Jim said, we only got this document from Major League Baseball in the last few weeks. So it's not like we had it and we've been sitting on it. It's 100 and some pages long, and we've finally gotten through it all, and we decided to share it with our partners at the city. The real rub is, in order to be a part of this new affiliation, we need to execute an agreement with Major League Baseball by February the 10th. And as Jim said, we just got it ourselves a couple weeks ago. So why do we want to move quickly on this? The reason we want to do it is we think it's in all of our best interest to modify the lease and make sure the lease agreement is in place and solid before we enter into this partnership with Major League Baseball. Just to have our T's crossed and our I's dotted, if you will. And like I say, we have to sign that no later than February the 10th. So our plan is to hopefully have a good discussion with you, answer any questions, give people time over the next couple of weeks to digest what we've come up with our partners in the city, and then hopefully get this approved in the council meeting in 2 weeks. And then we can sign the agreement with Major League Baseball probably the next day, and off we go. The final thing I'll say before I turn it over to others is, I don't think I probably have to talk too much about, the importance of Lansing or the importance of the lug nuts to Lansing. I could certainly throw out a bunch of numbers on, how many employees we have and how much taxes we pay and all of that. But I think at the end of the day, the best thing I can say to hopefully have you feel comfortable with what we're doing here is, I think we've been really good partners for 25 years. As has the city. This has been a terrific relationship. I think it's fair to say the reason we put the ballpark there was to renovate and help revigorate downtown Lansing. And I think for those of you who've grown up in Lansing and been there as long as I have, you'll see that we've certainly started that process. There's a ways to go still, but the ballpark has made a big difference, I think, is the bottom line. It's more than just the people that come, but it's the fact that we have created a reason to come back down to Lansing. And I would just point a couple numbers out. It used to be we just played baseball games there. Now we're not only playing our 70 baseball games, but we're doing approximately 150 other events. Last year, even in a COVID year, we ran 150 events over there, including our own league that we created, as you probably saw, the Lemonade League. In 2019, which was our last year of playing full season of baseball, we had 250 events and drew over 350,000 people in the ballpark. So the fact is, it's a magnet for the community. And the reason we need to make some of these subtle changes, and they are fairly subtle, is to really be in keeping with some of our needs as a private business. I think the city's needs. And one thing Jim did just mention, we're actually increasing the lease by approximately 5 years to ensure that the team is here, not just through 34 when the original lease was signed, but for 5 years beyond that. So I'll shut up at this point. I'm going to stick around and answer any questions you have. Jim, if you think we have a couple minutes, I would love to introduce Dick Nussbaum and have him maybe make some introductory comments. Is he available?
I would like to stick to the, as we're already a half hour into this meeting, and if it's not essential to the decision-making process, we can stick to introductory comments at another time. But as far as the details, I think the council will be very interested in the details of the
That's fine.
Changes, Mr. Dixon. I appreciate that. If he wants to pop on and say hello, that's fine. But in the interest of a packed agenda, I'd like to move to the
Let me just, if you wouldn't mind, let me just tell you who Dick is. So if everybody wants to talk to him, they can. Dick is the president of our league, the Midwest League, which is the league that plays in Lansing. He's been the president of the league for 10 years, and before that, he was the general counsel. So the reason he's available, in case anybody has any questions about the Major League Baseball structure, the structure of the league. Other teams in the league, by the way, have been doing these restructured leases. So he also has some input on that. So if anybody has any questions, I just want to let you know he's available. Okay.
Mr. Nussbaum, thank you for making yourself available this evening. We very much appreciate it. Mr. Whitigan, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I'll just quickly summarize here. First, we appreciate you taking the time to review this today. And given that this is not the normal process, I will make myself available to answer any questions from council related to the financial side of this deal between now and your next meeting. But the current TMO payment is consisted of 5 primary components that fluctuate throughout the year. So it takes into effect DGR, which was mentioned, like ticket sales, sponsorship, retail. Any DGR above and beyond, 4.1 million, the city gets a certain percentage of. Clubhouse tickets, special event surcharges, and special event food and beverage net tax. So basically what this amendment is doing is this changes the TMO lease payment structure from revenue-based to flat annual payments, like Jim had mentioned in the beginning. So we felt by going to this structure, it's going to be mutually beneficial and streamlines the whole process for both parties. Our goal was to keep the city at or close to the same financial obligations with the current agreement we're under, and held harmless while also keeping the Lugnuts in the city of Lansing. We've had a 25-year relationship with the Lugnuts, and let's hope it goes another 25 years. So over the time of the agreements from first meeting with Tom and his team, the city finance team, OCA and Baird ran models, kept in touch with the team, and went back and forth. And what we're discussing here tonight was what we came upon that holds the city harmless. And it should be noted that we're going to see additional dollars that we didn't see before. It was mentioned in the beginning that our capital improvement payments from the city to TMO will be significantly reduced. So that's where we're at tonight.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that we need to hear from before we turn it over to the council? Nope. Okay, very good. Council members Wood, then Hussein, then Jackson.
First of all, do you have figures as to what the current revenues are that we're getting from the team, and what our expenditures are, our debt service to the bonding that we've done?
Yeah, we are currently working on those models, and then when we send over the draft lease agreement, we can send those over. But Baird is here to talk on the current lease arrangement and any kind of proposal to the additional new money of $1.25 million.
Well, how do we know that we're going to be held harmless if you don't have those numbers for us?
So we ran draft models initially and went back and forth.
Is that similar to what the soccer was going to be that ended up not coming to fruition?
I apologize. I can't speak to the soccer too much, as that was done prior to my arrival, but I can look into that for you and get back with you.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think what might be useful for us, there's nothing in front of me but a letter here from Jim.
Exactly.
And it would be useful to have a side-by-side that talks about the what we're getting now under DGR, what we're getting under the other things, what we're planning now. Does TMO have any outstanding debt or payments owed to the city that are being erased with this agreement? What's the long-term net for the city here? Right. When all of the nuts and bolts, hate to keep it going back to the name of your store, but that's useful in this context. What all those things, when they come together, what that looks like for us. Yes, I'm hearing it's a good deal, but what does it look like compared to the rest? And I think that would be very useful for this body, particularly if we're being asked to make a decision in a week or 2 weeks rather. That I think that's what I'm hearing from Carol, and I know I'm going to hear that from the head nods I've seen around the table. I've only been here for 3 years, but I'm picking up on the signs.
No, those are, thank you, President Spadafore. Those were a number of the questions that I was leading up to and trying to get information from. And then we had some significant expenses that we paid out because of the soccer equipment and things that were bought. There was also advertisements and things like that happened. Can we get information as to what those costs were, and were any of those, were we able to recoup any of those? I know that was a question that was asked, I think back in December, when we were looking at making some adjustments. And so I want to know where those issues are.
So what I will do is get you those numbers for the soccer, Councilmember Wood, and then we will get side-by-side comparison that you will be able to review the numbers prior to your next council meeting, and then I will make myself available in that time frame to discuss with a group of you or one-on-one all those numbers.
I would like that information transmitted to the internal auditor at the city's internal auditor for a review of those. So if those would all be made sure that those are sent on to him, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
I think that hits because many of those questions, my financial questions, can't be answered because we don't have them in front of us. So at this point, I might have some questions coming up after some of the other council members, but no,
So
I do have one more, President Spatafor. Jim indicated that he had a point by point of the leases from 1995. Could we make sure that that's transmitted to council as well? Thank you.
I think Jim is saying whatever we want, Miss Councilmember Wood, but
What I was referring to was the analysis of the 214 lease with all the bullet points, the current lease that we're under right now. I've got the other agreements.
I'd like to, is there a way to look at those to have that information as well, Jim? From 1995 to where we are today.
Well, absolutely, anything's possible. We don't have it produced, but we can do that.
All right. And lastly, what has been the cost of having Beard do an analysis on this as part of this? I'd like to get that cost as well.
Yeah, I can send that over, but just a quick summary is we just pay Baird per the agreement, a flat retainer. So he's not charging by the hour to produce these analysis for us. But I can also send you the agreement between the city.
So if he does nothing, he's not getting paid. He's not getting paid.
It's just a flat monthly payment.
Yeah.
That's
So
between
okay.
the cities, but there's not above and beyond hourly rate, is what I'm saying.
Okay. So if there's a month he's not doing anything, he's still getting paid.
I'm sure he wishes there was a month where I didn't have him assist, but you know, theoretically, I see Brian's raising his hand.
yeah, so I was actually going to ask, so it seems like I have a lot of council members with their hands up, but I know that actually Mr. Leffler may be able to answer some of Councilmember Wood's questions. So Councilmember Hussein, Patricia, what are you saying?
I'm sorry, what is that, Council?
Well, I was going to ask if you, yeah.
I don't want to hear from him. I want to hear from the council.
All right, then.
So, because we might have questions too. So I would like us to ask our
I agree. Go. That's fine.
Hey, Vice President Hussein.
Okay, I was confused because I didn't realize I hadn't put my hand down. But I will say, I agree with Councilwoman Wood. I don't want to belabor the fact that we simply don't, we have nothing in front of us at this point. And that's concerning when you look at, we're being asked to pull the trigger in 2 weeks. And so again, Mr. Whitigan, when we look at, as an example, the annual lease payment, I want numbers for, on average over maybe the last 5 years prior to COVID. Obviously we need to know the annual city CIP expense that we've been paying historically and what kind of deal we're getting on that end. When you look at, and I really appreciate Councilwoman Wood's point with regards to soccer. I want to know, as an example, did we pay our $125,000 marketing payment to TMO? It would have been in December. Have we been able to recoup any of the costs from the $150,000 in turf equipment that we bought? Really the only aspect that kind of sold us on that was extra commerce downtown, which really never happened. And then the other piece was obviously the ticket share in terms of the premium seating. I'd like to know what we got from that. So there's a number of things, and I'll send those questions your way, Mr. Whitigan, so you know exactly what I want responded to, so that we can take a kind of a fair and objective look at this. The other piece, I really am wondering, and since we do have Mr. Dixon on the phone, I understand the financial implications of COVID. That's something obviously that the city is not immune to either. And so we are also grappling with some of those financial losses. And they're severe in our case, and they're going to continue to be severe in our case. I guess I'm wondering, when you talk about minor leagues paring back, they're ranked by 42 teams. And when we talk about the reclassification in the long term, in this contract extension, we're talking long game here and long term, the ball club really should become more profitable and more marketable. Because again, you're going to have less teams. You have this reclassification. So you're moving up to, my understanding is high A ball. So I'm not understanding why we're restructuring this and kind of over the course of many years and even extending when we're talking about really a financial hit with regards to COVID over the short term. With regards to the restructuring, I just don't know that we can be as a city, and again, we'll have these conversations over the next 2 weeks and ultimately decide in a couple of weeks, but I just, same types of arguments were made as to why we should, enter into the agreement that we entered into just a couple of years ago with regard to soccer. But I don't know that we should be taking into consideration the cost of transporting players and feeding players with regards to our lease agreement. So number of questions, but if you can talk about the marketability of the club and how this, actually, I think improves and enhances, that would be appreciated at some point as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Hussein. We got Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Betts, Councilmember Spitzley, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Leffler if he has the numbers for us, and then we will go back to questions. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I don't know who all can answer these, but first is kind of to Mr. Hussein's point, what kind of securities does Lansing Lugnuts have in this new restructured league when clearly some teams were eliminated? I mean, what happens if they restructure in 3 years, because baseball is a little different at that point, or shorter or longer? Is there any kind of projection there? And also, am I oversimplifying the lease agreement as far as what was sent as a summary, when it looks like the city would pay, it says like $1.25 million upfront, and then the city receives on the pay schedule that flat rate back? Is that too simple? That was just one question. And then also for, I guess this might go to Mr. Mark Lawrence at this point, is somebody, I mean, I know that the mayor called me and gave me some information and I appreciate it. I probably could have followed up there, but is there going to be somebody on our record here on Zoom from the city that's going to say why this was a good idea or why this is good for the city, especially since I read that negotiations continued long and hard through almost evening time, which makes me think that there was some concessions back and forth. So I just want to hear the city argument again, so to reconsider. Thank you.
So next up, sorry, I've got Councilmember Betts. Councilmember Jackson, I didn't hear a specific question yet. I know I've got the mayor coming in to I think address some of your questions. So I'm going to we'll get the questions asked, and then I do want to get some people to respond. So we'll go ahead, Councilmember Betts.
Thank you, President Spatafor. I would prefer that a couple of my answers be answered now so that we can have a bit of a discussion here, because it sounds like we're going to get a whole bunch of answers at the end and not really have a lot going on. Robert, my first question for you, being an economist myself, I know what economic and financial models take into account. What are the assumptions that you are making for revenue growth, I guess, tourism growth and things like that in your models that you're creating to move things forward? I guess it's not you, so your staff or Baird, whoever's doing this. What assumptions are you making about future revenues and investment and things like that that you're going to put in this model that you're going to present to us?
So part of the, and speaking just kind of initially with Scott Keith, not too long ago, it sounds like the city did an economic analysis, and that came in showing Lugnuts generates about $12 million to the local economy here in Lansing. I know in our conversations over the past week, South Bend, Indiana just recently did an economic analysis, and now they have a similar attendance size as the Lansing Lugnuts, and theirs was showing a benefit to the city of around 24 million.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Robert. I'm not asking about an economic impact analysis. I'm asking about your revenue analysis for how much we're going to be bringing in over the next 15 years, because you said very specifically that you're going to be modeling out the revenue and cost associated with the new agreement versus the old agreement. I'm wondering what assumptions you are making in moving that forward, not what our economic impact is.
So there's less of an, if I'm understanding you correctly, there's less of an assumption with this, because the current agreement that we have, that takes some assumptions, because you're getting a percentage of ticket sales. So we have to assume what ticket sales are going to be, and we're eliminating that whole thing and replacing it just to simplify it with flat payments. We're still going to get 25% of city event food and beverages and 100% of parking revenue, which goes to the parking fund. So I guess to answer your question, there's less, we're just taking the numbers given and calculating them out through the remainder of the lease.
Okay, but when you're comparing the old lease to the new lease, you're going to have to make assumptions on the growth path of revenue sales under the DGR program as compared to our new, less assumptions needed for sure, but what are the assumptions that you're making on the old lease to show us the comparison between the two? That's what I would like to know.
All right. I see Brian's raising his hand, so I'm failing at answering your question. So let me turn it over to Brian.
So Councilmember Betts, for purposes of the, I call it the three major revenue sources. One is the TMO lease payment, and under the current model, we had assumed that there would be like a 2% annual growth in that revenue stream. Okay. For purposes of the stadium naming rights, that's a fixed payment. So there's no growth in that number in terms of like an annual growth, but there is a growth within that agreement. The current bond payment is based on the lease that was entered into in 2014 as a fixed dollar amount. So that's kind of on the revenue side. Going back on the second side, which is the expenditure side, we know what the annual debt service is associated with the 2015 financing that was done. It's a fixed rate. That the interest rate on that is at 3% right now. The second item it mentioned in the bullet point by Mr. Smirka is that the city's share of utilities is a 50-50 split. We had assumed in that expenditure model that on average that the utilities were going to grow at a 3% annual rate. And then one of the key components with one of the improvements within this at the stadium is lighting. And so the goal here is that the cost of lighting with using LED would be less. The second item is that repairs and maintenance, which is near the last bullet points that you had on the letter from Mr. Smirka, is that the amounts that are shown in that letter are maximums in terms of what was agreed to. And so right now, looking at the comprehensive, like before and after, one of the things that we had actually recommended is that with the condition of the stadium, with the improvements that have been made in the past, that amount of capital improvements maximum be actually reduced, even to the point where 2020 and 2021, there's no reason to have an improvements because there's nobody in the stadium pretty much at the time. So those are the kind of the three larger components. As it relates to other ancillary revenue, we didn't make any projections in terms of like income tax or anything like that. That's essentially still in the model before or after, whether it would be if there was a new lease or not, that would still be paid. But those are the components that we had looked at as it relates to the transaction. Also, with the improvements that would be made, we're going to be looking at what's going to be the best approach to finance that as well. As everyone knows, cost of capital is at the lowest component, at the lowest levels, and that we would certainly provide to this body what are the options for their consideration to finance those improvements. So
thank you, Brian. I guess as a follow-up, 2% is less than inflationary. How did you come up with that number? And is that based on historical revenue growth, or is that just based on you just saying 2% inflation? How are you producing that estimate?
Based on pretty much in terms of the ability to raise prices, so to speak, in this market is the challenge. So yes, it is less than inflation. But in terms of a entertainment cost, I made an assumption of 2%. So there's no statistical information. I did not look at historical because I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. So I just use an overall average of 2%.
Thanks, Brian. That makes me a little bit uncomfortable from an economic perspective, saying that we're just going to make a 2% assumption moving forward based on that. We don't know what's going on with the historical trends and stuff like that. Basically, every economic analysis that I have ever looked at has used historical trends to measure forward. And I realize that COVID's happening. We don't know what's going on, but we've had this lease agreement for 25 years. We know about recessions. We know what happens to ticket sales during recessions. We can estimate when recessions are going to go forward. We know about inflationary increases. We know about all of this. I would like to see a model moving forward. The only way that I'm going to approve this change, if I see a model moving forward that is actually taking into account historical revenue increases. And I don't know what those are because Robert's unable to present them to us today. And obviously you aren't either, and that's fine. But I need to be looking at some actual economic estimates to this before I make a decision to basically do what I imagine is a large cost to the city, and we don't know what that is, or else, I mean, this wouldn't even be a conversation that we're having right now, because Tom's out for profit. He's a private entrepreneur, and that's what he's going to do, and it's going to cost the city some money, and I need to know what that is. So thank you for answering those questions. Jim, question for you. We're 6 years into a 20-year lease. What does this look like if we don't approve this lease renewal?
The lease stays in effect, the one that's out there right now in the first.
And if they fail to meet the terms of their agreement?
Well, just like any contract, termination clauses, damages, whatever, we have remedies built into those contracts.
All right, thank you. And thank you, President Spatafor, for being patient with me, and I appreciate everybody's answers. We'll keep talking about this moving forward. Obviously, 2 weeks is way too short to be making this decision, so there's going to be a lot of questions coming from this body, I am sure.
Thank you, Councilmember Betts. Councilmember Spitzley, Dunbar, then Wood.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I agree with Councilman Betts. 2 weeks is extremely short time to try to of this magnitude. So I have a question, couple questions, Mr. Whitigan. When did it sounds like Baird has taken the lead on doing a lot of this economic analysis and a lot of this stuff for the city. So when did they get this information?
I think it was around basically when we got it. We sent it over because the capacity, finances we're working on work share, and we wanted to make sure that we knew that the timeliness was important. So we tapped Baird to assist as soon as we got the information from Lugnuts.
And that was?
I want to say it was late December. Jim, we were just talking about this. Do you recall when it was we got this? December 18th? I think he's saying yes, he's muted, but it was around December 18th.
So you guys have had it about a little over a month.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
The
first meetings that we had were in December, but the actual proposal wasn't until right after the first of the year, January 4th or 5th, Rob?
Right. 5th.
Okay. So, Mr. Whitigan, you mentioned an economic impact statement, and I know that that's different than what Councilmember Betts.
Okay, right.
Before, when was that done?
I would have to ask Scott Keith. That was just a sidebar conversation that he had mentioned. The last one that was done showed around 12 million. I'm not sure when it was done.
Yeah,
I know South Bend, Indiana was very recent.
Oh, and I appreciate that about South Bend, but I'm interested in when was the last one done for the city.
Right.
So, Mr. Dixon mentioned certain upgrades like batting cages and some other stuff that he implies are going to be required of Major League Baseball in order to compete. Or so I'm wondering, are those requirements or are those wants?
From my understanding, those are requirements by MLB. Those aren't wants from Mr. Dixon.
And that's what I asked. I wanted to make sure.
Right.
So I would be interested in getting a list of requirements that Major League Baseball is requiring for the upgrades of the stadium. Also, I thought we had put together, well, I guess Councilman Hussein mentioned the capital improvement funds. I mean, do we have a capital improvement fund for the Lugnut Stadium? And if we do, how much is in there? And, if I can get the particulars for that. I got a couple,
Absolutely.
I got a couple more. We talked about the flat, you guys are proposing to switch over for a flat yearly rate versus a percentage. And I know that the administration also did that with the Lansing Board of Water and Light. You switched over to like a flat return every year.
Correct.
So is that something that you model that you're doing, or why are we doing that? And I think Councilmember Wood also asked that question. So I'd be interested in the philosophy behind why we're switching over to that. So when you talked about the market and how you've negotiated in a particular market, are you talking about the COVID market right now, or what market, what market factors are you said you're talking about the existing, you're taking into account the existing market. Are you talking about COVID?
No, no. We're trying to look at the latest normal years, I guess you could say, for lug nuts, and then going forward, assuming non-COVID.
Okay. I think that's probably my last question. We also talked about financing of the I think he talked about financing of the capital improvements. I think that I'd like a little bit more information about that and what we're going to actually finance. Businesses all over are hurting because of COVID. We've got businesses here in Lansing, small businesses that are just hurting something awful. So I want to make sure that what we're doing in this renegotiation and this extension isn't COVID related, or we're not trying to do this as a result of one company having issues and hurting because of COVID, because that would be unfair. We wouldn't want that, because other companies and other businesses in the city are hurting as well. And then my last thing is, the whole thing about the 2 buses and the food. I'm hoping that was just provided as information and anecdotal, and not provided as a justification for why you need to renegotiate this lease and this contract, because having the lug nuts, they need 2 buses, or they need an upgrade of food. I'm just hoping that that's not part of the justification. Thank you.
Okay, I'm being told that someone can give us the capital improvement fund answer, and that someone is the mayor. So I'm going to pop him in here to answer your question, Councilmember Spitzley, and then we'll go to the next council member, if that's all right.
Just going backwards, Rob hasn't been here for the last few budgets. We in the contract are required to provide between a minimum and a maximum in capital improvement every year. That's in the 2015 or 2014 contract. So I think in our first year we provided the minimum. Last year we provided somewhere in the middle. It's in the budget every year. There's no fund. There's dollars that are needed for the Lansing Center. There's dollars that are needed for the stadium. So we put in whatever is required in the contract. Last year they used it to increase the nets, because baseball said you have to have nets further in order for safety for the residents. We've used it for, I want to say, lights, and so we've used it for different pieces of the stadium. But we spend on infrastructure as we go every year. I believe the contract as it is right now requires $200,000 in the current year. In the negotiations between the city and the team, that was eliminated for the current year, because, as was said, there wasn't a whole lot of baseball being played, and even though there was some. And then it's going to be reduced by half moving forward. So that's part of when we look at the spreadsheet, and you'll get all these numbers. I think Brian's got a whole spreadsheet on these, so it may be worthwhile to have him comment. But our maximum is going to go from 200 to 100, and then we're going to finance the necessary infrastructure improvements. And then with the refinancing coming at the lower rates, that's what makes it a wash. So they will get you the numbers. I understand the questions between soccer and baseball. Soccer was a risk, and we took a risk, and it didn't pan out, and that's disappointing. Baseball has been successful in Lansing for 25 years. And I think that that is a proven entity here in Lansing. So for me, from the minute this came to us, and I don't think we got a proposal with numbers until recently. You know, I know we've been working on the models, or Baird has been working on the model, but we just got numbers recently, and our staff worked on this really hard all last week to try and get something. Because my direction was this has to be revenue neutral for the city. It has to be a wash for the city. And with the refinancing and with the reduction in the capital improvement and then the new infrastructure costs, that's how we get to a wash. Again, I think Brian Leffler has a lot of those numbers in the model. So whenever you all are ready, he can probably present some of that. He can email you and we can provide that, put it up on the website or provide it to the public so that we get it all out there as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Councilmember Spitzer, you good for now? Okay. Next up is Councilmember Dunbar, Wood, then Garza.
Thank you very much, Council President Spatafor, and thank you all for being here to answer questions. I have been taking notes on all of the questions asked so far and trying not to duplicate. My biggest concern, and I guess thank you for the mayor for stepping in, is how much this is going to affect our bottom line now and in the future, and the revenue projections and any kind of return that we're expecting. And I think my concern, and basically after looking at health projections with relation to COVID, this isn't going away anytime soon. I mean, obviously there was a bad year this year because nobody could go to baseball games and very little was played, but moving forward, the projections on your ticket sales, you guys have seats in there that are like airplane seats. You sit and you have to, you can't see me here, but I'm scrunching, right? So for families, if you're anticipating sales based on capacity, I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know that people are comfortable yet going into a very tight seated situation in the middle of COVID. I don't know that, that this is necessarily, 2 weeks is going to be a very tough timeline to analyze this. And I'm going to put this out there, and I know everybody's thinking this, is that we have hungry, homeless, unemployed, struggling families in this city. And this may not be the moment when we can direct funds into something of a recreational sport that not all of those families will even participate in. They will not go. They can't afford it. And so I'm going to have to take all of that into consideration when looking at how these projections play out before making a decision. So I hope that you guys can address some of that in some of the data that you give us in the coming weeks, days, whatever, for us to analyze before we actually have to vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Wood, then Garza.
Just a couple more questions. Did Beard do the analysis for the soccer? No, you did not.
No.
Can you, Robert, find out who in the administration did that analysis when it came to us?
Absolutely.
Did you look into that? My other question is, there has to be an estimate on the lighting and the different things that you mentioned that were capital improvements. And based on today's sale of bonds, can you give us a projection of what that could cost and what the debt service would be for that? And then my last question would be, if this was approved, how soon would those improvements have to be done in order to make that? And Mayor Shore, you indicated that that because of COVID, we didn't do some of the improvements in this year's capital improvements, but we also reduced that budget, is my understanding, when Scott Keith was before us asking to have some of the gross spec dollars for them to be able to utilize those dollars in an emergency, that they had around $250,000 that was reduced from the 3 entities that they manage.
Yeah, I don't think that, I think what I said was, in the contract that's before us, it would eliminate the current year payment. We budgeted it, whatever we had to under the contract. We budgeted the minimum, but we budgeted whatever we had to in the contract last year. I'd have to go back and talk to Scott about what dollars he's moving around, but I don't know that it's the infrastructure dollars from the stadium.
Okay, I'd like that looked at, because it's my understanding that there was what the Lansing, what Lefka thought they had proposed in their budget, and what we ended up passing was $250,000 less, and there was a portion of that was stadium dollars. So if we could get that information, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
We can ask Scott. I know Scott Keith and Price Dobrinick came to me with that, just to be able to move dollars around through their 3 different budgets. So we can ask them where the money came from, but he did not tell me specifically it was coming from the stadium infrastructure, but we can certainly ask.
I think you're misunderstanding me. I know that they've asked to move dollars around, and I get that. But there was also a $250,000 reduction in their overall budget when it was approved by council. They were not aware of that reduction in the budget until after it was passed.
I would disagree with that assessment. It was something that was negotiated with them. There was a disagreement on if it was a $200,000 one-time reduction the year before, or if it was $200,000 every year. The conversation that was originally had was $200,000 every year. We worked through some of that disagreement. It was the previous finance director who negotiated that with the LEFTA director. And we've had conversations about that, and we've kind of come to a good place, but that wasn't in the resolution that came before you all.
No, it wasn't.
Right. No, that was something completely different, and it was a disagreement that we showed them the information, and then we committed to making sure they got their payment early and to make sure that LEPA was able to move forward. But there was a reduction that was made in the budget last year, and that is something that we had conversations with them about, and it passed through council.
My sources and the people that are part of that board have given me different information on that. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Garza. Thank you, everyone who answered in that round. Mr. Councilmember Garza, your turn.
Thanks, Council President, and thanks everybody for being here. Very good questions by my colleagues, and I'm trying not to restate the same questions. So, Mayor, I appreciate the call this weekend, which you stated that this will be a wash, or I'm hoping it will be a wash because of the refinancing at a lower rate, and the normal $200,000 a year cost was reduced in half moving forward. Now, Mr. Loeffler, I would like to see that on paper if I could, to see how that is actually projected, and if that in fact is the case, that it will be a wash. A question I do have though, will there be any rebranding? I know that we were the Toronto Blue Jays, affiliate with them. Now we're with the Oakland A's. Obviously, I don't see any of that on any of the t-shirts or hats. But are there going to be any rebranding? And is that something that the city and Lugnuts would be able to capitalize and make any profit on?
Anyone? No information at this point. Is that?
Jeremy, I know you had talked to me about that. I was going to ask Jim to look at the provisions in the contract if we make money on the merchandising, so we can get you that information in the current contract. We're not changing that. We're not seeking to change that, whatever the provision is. But Jim, I don't know if you know what's in the current contract, or Tom, if you know what's in the current contract on merchandising. I'm not sure that what we get from the merchandising sales, if anything.
You want me to answer that, Mayor?
If that's okay.
You're able to, Mr. Dixon. Yes, please.
I'd be happy to. I think to Jim's point, or Robert's point, the city actually asked the team, as we were negotiating this last week, to move to a flat fee structure, which I think I don't want to put words in the city's mouth, but I think they felt more comfortable that it was a guaranteed fixed payment. So as Jim said, basically this deal, and I, by the way, I appreciate everybody that you haven't seen all the terms of this yet, so I get that. We're going from a percent of revenue to a fixed fee. So yes, under the current deal, you would have received I think it was 5% of retail sales. And now it's going to a fixed fee. So there's no percentage anymore. It's just a guaranteed fixed fee is the answer to that question.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, my last question is, will the Major League or Oakland Athletics be contributing any money towards this? And if not, is there any room for negotiations for them to offer? Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, you know, everybody's hurting budget wise. You know, is there room for them to kick in some money?
Again, do you want me to address any of these?
Anybody who can, yeah, Mr. Dixon, go for it.
Sure. No, Councilman Garza, I'd be happy to do that. You know, I think the answer is probably not. I mean, the way these deals are done, and I don't want to bore everybody, but these affiliation deals between the teams are fixed. So there's no ability to go in and do a specific negotiation between the minor league team and the major league team. The thing that I would tell you is it's still a good relationship between the major leagues and the minor leagues. So the fact that we get these players from the Oakland A's is extremely valuable. And you know, I think we should all rest assured that we're getting a pretty good return on our deal here from the A's. So structurally, there is no way to go in and negotiate a separate deal. But the fact is, what they're providing us, and you know, that we get the show that we get to put on over there with the quality of the players is really what they are providing. And you know, they provide some things to the ballpark that we would otherwise have to put in there as part of the standard deal, but you can't go in and negotiate a special deal. None of the teams can.
Okay, I appreciate that, and thank you very much. Now, I guess as far as the rebranding goes, I mean, is there any room for rebranding to maybe possibly bring the revenue up? You know, for instance, Lansing, have the A as the Oakland A's in the word Lansing Lugnuts, and yeah, I guess that's all right now. Thank you.
Where were you when we were designing those smokestacks, Jeremy? Jim, do you have an answer for us, or you just want to say something?
What answer for Councilmember Garza?
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jim.
The current DGR, you know, that formula for determining revenue has sales of novelties and souvenirs at the stadium during the TMO baseball games and stadium souvenir stores, but it excludes internet sales. So it is in the formula right now. It's a percentage DGR. I mean, that's the revenue stream is you calculate the DGR, which is everything I mentioned before. And then there's a percentage in the contract the city gets.
And now it's going to be a flat rate though, correct?
Yes, well, that's what's being proposed, yes.
All right, and I guess I did have one more question. I'm sorry, guys. How long is this contract with Oakland A's?
10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson, and then I'd like to ask a few if I may. So Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. So I did have a question, and it was, what securities does Lansing or the Lugnuts have that would imply that we're going to still be in this contract in the somewhat latter years once it starts getting more favorable for the city? Because the way it looks now is if we can get to approximately 2025 or 26, then that 1 million in a quarter becomes more like we're just getting it back over and over. So what securities do we have to get that far so we can benefit from the maximum part of the contract?
I'll take a shot at that if you don't mind. And Dick Nussbaum, this might be a place for him to jump in if we want further discussion. But I guess what I would say is the longest deal we ever had, I think in the history of minor league baseball with the major leagues, was 7 years. So I think, and as I just said, the deal we're just getting ready to sign with Major League Baseball and the Oakland A's is 10 years. So we know we have a confirmed deal for 10 years, which frankly is longer than any deal we've ever had in our history. So I can't guarantee you what might happen 20 years from now, but I can tell you we've got a 10-year deal now, which is better than anything we've had in the past, if that helps answer your question.
It does. And what if something happens to baseball where, I don't know, that makes that deal not good? Is there those type of clauses in there?
You mean between now and 10 years? It's pretty much a guaranteed, it's a firm contract. I mean, when we execute this contract, which we have every intention of doing on February the 10th, it is an ironclad 10-year deal with Major League Baseball and with the Oakland A's. And the city has seen the contract. We have shared the actual 100 and some page document. We have been completely transparent. The city has a copy of it.
So that's guaranteed to the pay schedule, at least 10 years as far
Right.
as the.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you for appreciating. This is a big decision that's sitting in front of us. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think what has been clear from the folks around this table, or whatever we call it in 2020, 21, is that we would like to see a side by side of what it is we're doing, what we expect over from now until 2034, and how that changes from now until 2041. So if there is a single moving part in this contract that has changed, we would like to see that written down as to what that looks like, and the sooner the better. And I trust you all can get that to us. I know, Mr. Leffler, there were some pieces that perhaps we glossed over in the beginning and didn't give you a chance to state before we got started. I'd like you to take a few moments, if you can, if you have any of the information to share with us, but certainly we're going to need something in writing long before February 8th to digest and respond to, and have questions to you, so that when we get to the 8th, it's not new information. If we don't vote on this now, the lug nuts go away. So I'm going to need to, I don't know if I'm speaking for everybody, but that is certainly the place I'm sitting in. So Mr. Leffler, if you could go ahead, and then we're going to move on to item 1.
Thank you, Council President. So in terms of what we were looking at is the original proposal that were provided by the team in terms of the TMO lease payment with that dollar amount, and with the assumption, Councilmember Betts, of that 2%. And I was going to go and look at that approach differently to see if there's anything else I need to give some background on. And as I had mentioned before, with those revenue sources of the naming rights over this time period between now and the end of the naming rights with the team, with the Jackson Field and the formula and the $125,000 that's being paid, is that prior to looking at the first payment, is that we were looking at essentially approximately about $11 million worth of dollars coming in over this full 20-year period of that is what's being contemplated here. And we can show you that side by side.
Now, 28 or 20?
It was 20 years.
20 years, okay, sir.
Yeah, I'm trying to go all the way up, because I think what you're trying to say is, where are we going to be with this proposal at the end of 2040, 2041? So that's what I'm trying to look at. It was approximately $11 million. The second thing is then with the costs that we were trying to see where this city is on related to the expenditures, or at least in looking at the magnitude of dollars of total expenditures, we're supposed to be around $14 million over this 20-year period. And that's including debt service, projected utility share at 3%, and then these maximums of the cost of these capital improvements that are currently in the lease, which would, quote, in my mind, would be budgeted for the maximum, because that's the city's exposure, so to speak, under a contract. By changing the amount here is trying to reduce that exposure to the city. And so essentially there's a difference between revenue and expenses was about $2.8 million before and after. With that, one of the things that we were looking at was how do we get the additional, and that also included the $1.25 million of improvements. So the expenditures of $14 million was trying to finance the improvements over a 15 or 10-year period based upon what is the useful life of what's being financed. Under the flat payment, we are trying to look at a different revenue structure and expenditure structure so that over the time, that gap, so to speak, which was essentially $2.8 million under 20 years, based on what we had that's in the memo from Mr. Smirka, this gap is down to like 2.6 million. So it's essentially kind of like we looked at it as a break even over the life of the 20-year period. And so we can certainly provide you the side-by-side comparison that council members are asking for. And even to the point where that if there was a different assumption that we can stress this revenue on or these expenses on, we would be happy to share the workbook or ask Mr. Whitigan to at least answer your questions if you want to say, I think expenses are going to go up at 5% or 10%, or you could have different growths in assumption. As Councilmember Dunbar was talking about on the COVID, it could take a couple of years before people feel comfortable sitting in those seats. So there's alternatives here. We certainly be able to provide that. So again, the goal here was to look at the package that was initially provided to at least the administration that we had looked at. We had projected about a $2.8 million gap, and with this, what's proposed here with this flat payment with additional dollars under the naming rights or the guaranteed payments, we are looking at essentially a $2.69 million gap. So it's something that's lower.
Thank you. I think, I know we'll probably have some other questions, but I think for now we've gotten the information that we can have at this point in time. So I'm going to suggest we move on and request that the information that has been requested get to us as soon as you can possibly get it, so that we can have time to digest it and formulate questions if need be, certainly before the 8th.
Absolutely.
And also, I want to just make the announcement right now. We're going to start COW at 5 o'clock the next time this is on our agenda. So on the 8th of February, we'll be starting at 5 o'clock. So just everyone clear your 5 o'clock to 5:30 half hour now. Eat your dinner at 4:45 if you must. But I anticipate we'll have questions that evening as well, and I don't want to rush us through those. So we're going to move on. Thank you, Mr. Whitigan, Mr. Nussbaum, Mr. Leffler, Mr. Dixon, and anybody else who I forgot. Mr. Mayor, thank you for presenting this evening on this subject.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a reappointment of Darlene Fancher, City of Lansing member, Capital Area Transportation Authority. As with the other committees, we are reviewing this reappointment, but we did not invite Ms. Fancher in for the review because it is a reappointment. If anyone has an issue with her qualifications, we can pause it and bring her in at another meeting, but that's the process as it's been explained to me in other committees, that if it's a reappointment, it's reviewed, but not necessarily is there an interview again. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the reappointment.
President Spatafor, I would move the resolution.
Thank you. There is a motion before us. Is there someone have any questions about Ms. Darlene Fancher's qualifications for the CATA board? Seeing none, I would ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you very much. The next is another reappointment of Jillian Dawson for the EOCC. Mr. Vice President.
Yes, I would move the resolution. Again, this is a reappointment for Gilliam Dawson to the EOCC. Should this be approved, her term would expire 10/1/2027.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. As you all know, the EOCC does meet this year, so we're going to keep them at full strength. So with that, any questions? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Hussein,
Yes.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar,
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson,
Yes.
Councilmember Garza,
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley,
Yes.
Councilmember Wood,
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you very much. The next item is an ordinance to amend chapter 1279 to expand the Saginaw Street Overlay District. I believe Sue Statuick is going to speak on that and possibly see Bob Johnson's hands, but I don't think that's right. Sue, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Bob Johnson is with us. He's representing the applicant that applied to have the overlay district expanded to include this block. It's bounded by ML King to the east, Westmoreland to the west, Oakland to the north, and Saginaw to the south, but for a strip of property along the west side of the lot. And that was just intended to, sort of preserve the residential feel of that lots of that area, because you got all those residences along Westmoreland, so that you don't have, tall businesses right up to the front lot line, just dwarfing those properties on the other side of the street. And the applicant had no objection to that. Basically, what this does is it just allows for this property to be redeveloped. The applicant that Bob and others are working on would call for some apartments on this property. You're all familiar with the sort of high-rise building, that's office building that's right there at the northwest corner, and it would sort of surround that, is what they would be looking at right now. There's no plans to redevelop the property that the actual hospital is on right now. This is all just parking area where this new building would be constructed. And of course, it would include vacated Rose Court when that officially gets vacated. And that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, Councilmember Jackson.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that there are no plans to develop the hospital right now. It just seems like St. Lawrence is losing more and more of its services. I'm not even sure what all is left, but as much as I would like to see redevelopment, I guess the question is, and I read in the plans that there are no plans so far. I guess what sprung it? Is it just the applicant, or are there any plans for future redevelopment that's just not public right now?
Not at this point, Mr. Councilmember Jackson, but what this does is this sets the stage zoning wise for redevelopment of that site. Once somebody comes up with a plan and wants to do that, so they don't have to go through this process all over again. And I should have added up front that this was really an oversight. We should have extended the overlay district through this lot in the first place. Why we didn't do that, I don't recall. I could say is it was just an oversight on our part. But this that sets the stage for redevelopment when the time comes that there's a plan to do so.
Thank you. I guess just last, has there been any word from Sparrow about this at all?
Bob Johnson and company have been in contact with Sparrow all throughout the process. I've received emails from representatives of Sparrow. They're very familiar with this and have no objection to it. They're completely on board.
And I do just want to say too, this was up for, we've already had a public hearing on this. It's up for passage this evening. This is just with the transition between last year and this year. There wasn't a committee to refer it back to and kick it back to us. So that's why it's on cow tonight for those of you who might wonder why this is at cow tonight.
And just to add a little bit more on that, it went through the planning board November 4th and was unanimously voted out of from the planning board to council. So again, what you said, President Spatafor, we've had a public hearing on it. We've had presentations on it. So this is really just like I said, pass through for final passage. So we've had all of the reviews on this a number of times.
Thank you, Chair Spitzley. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you. I think Sue answered or clarified, because I was pretty sure this was just an oversight, that this wasn't included in the original. So Sue did clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Garza.
Thank you, Council President. I understand we are voting on this tonight, and I understand that you guys said that you've reached out to Sparrow several times. What about the other adjacent properties and property owners? Has there been
Everybody-
any feedback?
No, I'm sorry, Councilmember, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We notified all the property owners that are affected by this and all other property owners, and I should say owners, occupants, and taxpayers of all real property within this property to be extended and within 300 feet of the site. We've received no objections, in fact, no comments from anybody back except from Sparrow, just to say that they're on board.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, sure, thank you. The only other property owner would be the church.
And I think,
So north, and they benefit from this.
right, and there was also, right before we broke, I think it was the 14th, that we approved the road vacation that's right there as well. And so it's been moving forward, yes. And everybody in that area has been supportive.
Okay, I see no more hands, so if we could please call the roll on the motion. Wait, yes, please call the roll on the motion.
Did we get a motion?
We did. Council Vice President Adam Hussein made it.
Actually, I didn't, but I will.
Oh, sorry.
So I will move the ordinance, which is really an amendment to Chapter 1279, Appendix D, to expand the Saginaw Street Overlay District.
Now you have a motion, Madam
Okay,
Clerk.
thank you. Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes, and welcome back, Bob.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
All right, the next item is an ordinance. I will ask for a motion ahead of time, Mr. Vice President.
Sure. I would move the ordinance pertaining to Z7 2025 14 West Erie and 500 North Cedar, rezoning from 8 light industrial to G1 business district.
Very good. This was also another one of those situations that's been pulled to this from the Committee on Development and Planning. Madam Chair, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just there was a comment earlier, Ms. Stanaway made a comment that there was no supporting information. And again, this is a rezone. The proposal is for senior housing, 2 buildings, one senior housing, 82 units, another one multifamily, 77 units. It's a $34 million investment. It has, again, they've done their homework and talked to a number of the residents around, and everybody's supportive. This has been through a public hearing. I see, I'm going to call you Mr. Pete because I cannot pronounce your last name and I don't want to butcher it. He was there and he provided a presentation earlier on the project as well. And so it's been through public comment. It's been through the planning board and now it's here.
All right, because we have already seen this, is there does anyone have any questions before? Okay, we're gonna go ahead, Ms. Pete, I appreciate your presence, but it looks like we're ready to move this forward. So I will just ask the clerk to call a roll.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
And Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. The next item is a resolution with a change of intent for the Townsend ramp. Mr. Vice President, would you care to make a motion, get this properly before us, please?
This is actually the SLU.
I think we're actually on resolution SLU for special land use 4. You want me to take that up first?
Yes, sorry, I X'd out on my agenda before we were ready to move on. I'm just trying to burn through these things. Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
No problem. I would move the resolution. This is for the special land use 4, 2020 for 900 Southland Avenue, Suite 910, which would allow for a church in F commercial district.
That's why we make a good team. All right, Councilmember Spitzley, looks like you have a question.
No, I don't have a question. I just kind of wanted to give an overview of this as well. This one, we're moving it from, because we don't have a development and planning committee, like you said, and it's timely. The owners are the people who are proposing this change are leasing the building, and would like to move in and actually start conducting the church. And so it is a Soul Winners Ministry. It is for a church. There's a similar church already there. It's kind of out of the way. And so it's not getting a lot of commercial traffic. And so we just figured the highest and best use at this point was to, allow this entity to conduct church in one of the suites, as another entity is doing already.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, President Spatafor. Can either Patricia or Sue answer, since this is a lease, then the owner will be paying property taxes on this unit?
Yes, Councilmember, that's exactly correct. This will not become tax exempt.
Okay, so this just allows them to have the church there and that. It does not, so we're good with that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And there's sufficient, I know the location and everything, and there's, some other things going on in there, but they still believe that there's sufficient parking based on.
Oh. Yes, ma'am. There's more than adequate parking there. Even at peak time when the church that's there now is in full service, and there's a laundromat in there, and I think maybe one other light traffic type business. There is just an excess of parking in that area, a sea of unused parking. There's more than enough. Not to mention, the owner of this property also, if I remember correctly, owns one of the adjacent properties. So they've got, overfull parking on an adjacent site if they needed it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sue, I have a question for you related to Councilmember Woods. So while it won't be tax exempt under the lease arrangement, if they sell and the allowable use is church nonprofit, does that remove it from the tax rolls if the church buys it from the landlord?
The church would have to purchase the property.
Okay, but there's
no, and then they're only tax exempt for what they're using. They can't make it tax exempt and then rent to a laundromat.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mostly curious on my part. So, okay.
Sure.
Councilmember Vice President, you did make the motion, so let's go ahead and take the roll.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Very good. Now let's talk about the Townsend ramp, Mr. Vice President.
Sure, I would move the resolution. This pertains to a change of intent dealing with Townsend ramp sale revenue within the Lansing Fire Department.
Very good. Mr. Lawrence, who from the administration? Mr. Brower. All right. Letting Jake get settled into the Zoom here. Mr. Brower, you're up if you want to speak to this resolution, please. Here you are.
Hello, glad to be here. This resolution should be fairly straightforward, at least in what it is. So back in the day, we sold a parking ramp, the Townsend ramp. We being you guys, the City of Council, appropriated part of the net proceeds towards various capital projects. Of these projects, one included some improvements to the South Washington office complex for the fire department. There was $100,000 appropriated to that purpose, of which $93,000 remains unspent as of the close of the last fiscal year. It is the hope of the fire department to change the intent of how these funds will be spent. And so the council by resolution said it would go towards these walk improvements. Instead, they would like to use this to purchase additional washers for turnout gear. This will promote health and safety of our fire department officials Our chief is here available to answer any specific questions towards the health regulations or particular models, but this will go towards the purchase of these washers and related plumbing and electrical costs for installation.
Are there questions for Councilmember Wood?
Thank you, President Spatafor. Greg, I saw, there you are, Greg. Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Been a while.
I bet. Yeah, it has.
Yeah. I know that they were buying new washers and putting them in the various stations over the last couple of years. So is this just an extenuation of those, or is this something different?
Well, there's two types of washers for the fire service. One is for station laundry, basically sheets and towels and those types of things. And then you want to segregate the fire gear from that type of laundry facility. So the station laundry uses a regular residential washer. Currently, we have a turnout washer at Station 1, one at Station 6 that is inoperable, but has a minor repair. We're going to take care of that. And there's one in our maintenance division. And what these do is remove the contaminants of they're carcinogens basically from being in a fire. We've also made a number of policy changes where we're decontaminating as much as practical on the fire ground, bagging the dirty gear and bringing it back to the station and washing it. But we need the proper facilities. So we would endeavor to use the same style, the same brand that we have existing. And we're just trying to get ahead of the curve. The cancer rates in the fire service are much, much higher than the general public. And something we want to get ahead of by engineering in good practices as well as enforcing how we operate to minimize risk to the firefighters.
And I realize this isn't, again, this is equipment for the turnout gear, but how is the turnout gear replacement going along? You had gotten some grants for that.
Yeah, the other best practice is to try to get every firefighter a second set of gear. I think we're about 30 short of that. Right now, we're doing some exploration on potentially leasing gear over several years to keep it up to date. It has basically a 10-year shelf life. And so we're in, I'd say, decent shape, but not quite to where we need to be with that second set of gear. And then when we can get the proper equipment in place, then we can keep it clean and free of contaminants.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spitzley?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chief. Are you putting washers in each one of your, are you planning on putting them in each one of your stations, or are you just still going to have them strategically placed around the city?
We're going to attempt to put them at every station because what we want to, again, the best practice and common sense is we don't want to cross-contaminate gear, and that's still a concern where a firefighter may come to work at, say, Station 1 for 2 shifts and then have to go to another station and carry that gear in their personal vehicle because they're assigned to a different station. So we're trying to cover our bases, and kind of a concept is keep all the dirty, no dirty uniforms come into a station or leave, and the same for the turnouts, and so that we can keep it as clean as possible.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garza.
Thank you. In regards to the washing machines, are there going to be any upgrades needed? Are there washers there currently, or are there going to be new piping have to be installed? And if so, will we be using local labor to install that?
Well, two-part question. First, yes, we would use local labor, and in other than the existing stations, we will need plumbing and electrical for most of these installs. And so, yeah, that's going to be all. So part of it's purchasing the equipment, and part of it's the installation with the drains and the They're going to need 220 power to them, and they'll have to be vented. And so there's considerable labor in just installing one also.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that, Pat, just thumbs up if you don't have a question. I see your hand up still. Yeah, you're good. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chief. I think this is the first time I've been on a meeting with you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's kind of different being on one of these virtual meetings. I think after going on 23 years as a fire chief, this is the first for me for council meetings. So.
Oh, we saw you before sneaking behind Chief Tobin. Don't act like you haven't tried to be on.
Well, I was there. I was a spectator. I didn't have to be on the hot seat.
Very good. Well, thanks for being here. I honestly hope that never, when my washer goes, do I have to replace it with a commercial one after seeing this price tag. But thanks for your time.
Yeah, they're something else. Thank you.
And looks like we're all punched out on questions on this. So Sherry, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Very good. The next item is the Parks Master Plan, which we did have a special committee of the whole meeting Wednesday on, at which a lot of discussion was had. So I'm going to ask for a motion from the Vice President, and then if we have any final questions before putting this in front of the City Council this evening.
So moved.
Okay, the Parks Master Plan has been moved by Vice President Hussein. Are there any further questions from council related to this? Bearing in mind, we could probably do statements at the next meeting if necessary. Councilmember Wood, you're gonna do statements at the next meeting? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, so I don't see any further discussion from the committee of the whole. This will be up for passage this evening after a brief recess. So Sherry, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. And Mr. Kaczynski, I did see you turn on your mic, so we'll see you at the City Council meeting. You're not quite off the hot seat yet. We'll have this on the council agenda in a bit. Next item is a resolution. Mr. Vice President, I'd like to hand the gavel to you for a moment, if you would.
All right, Mr. Spatafor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So as you recall, tonight we are going to potentially approve a motion or a resolution that changes the committee makeup for the City Council. We had a lot of discussion about that a couple weeks ago, but one of the procedural things that goes along with that is that we have pending items in those committees. So this resolution basically reshuffles all those pending items into the appropriate committees without having to go through and make a re-referral for every single one of them. So we will move this out to the floor, and then if the rule change is approved, we will vote on this as well, but this needs to get to the floor first, and it basically just moves a number of things. If you'd like me to go over them, I can, but they're things that have already been referred by me, so we'll just I'm not interested in doing that unless someone particularly wants it. So I would move the resolution.
All right, there is a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion, questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Boak, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Member Dunbar.
Yes.
Councilmember Garza.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
And Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
All right, returning the gavel, President Spatafor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Okay, so that concludes this. Yes, Mr.
President?
Councilmember Wood.
Don't you have a late item?
Not for the cow. We have it just on council.
Okay, so you're not going to need a motion out of cow to have that on there. All right, thank you.
Nope, not as, I will ask the city attorney's office just to double check that, but Jim or Lisa, we have that late item related to the deficit and elimination plan, but it's coming up on the agenda. We don't need to do a motion this evening in cow, correct?
That's correct. As long as you have the number of votes you need to get it on the late item, you are covered.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for
No
checking,
problem.
Member Wood. With no further business for the committee, we are going to adjourn the committee and we will call council back to order at 7:30 p.m.